Since Victorian age covers the rule of Queen Victoria, so we can say that's an age that can be precisely mentioned because of a political tenure that begins 1837 and ended in 1901. We can say a dominant part or significant part, more than 60 years of 19th century when Queen Victoria was ruler. She succeeded to throne at the age of 18, I can say, because she was born in 1819, and at the age of 18, she became the queen, and she ruled from 1837 to 1901. That's approximately 64 years. The term Victorian age is often used to cover the whole of 19th century. Queen Victoria came to the throne in 1837 at a time when the monarchy was an institution, was not popular. The charm of King Henry VIII, Queen Elizabeth I, James I, that had died. There was a strong parliament, and there was a prime minister and his cabinet that were enjoying most of the executive parts. But that's the time, we can say, that was climax of British Empire, climax of British colonialism, and the same period when India, though that was about a century ago at the time of Jange-Palasi, when the Mughal rulers lost their parts, and even there were princely states like state of Bengal and state of Mysore that lost their independent role before East India Company and its design. But that was the year 1857 when India became the part of the British Crown. And British Empire ruled India for next 70 years, next 90 years, 1857 to 1947. So Queen Victoria was queen at that time. So monarchy as an institution was not particularly popular at that time, but monarch had a symbolic importance. And she represented British nation, British Empire. A history of the Victorian age records the period of economic expansion and rapid change. That's the time of growth of London, and you can say population that was about 2 million inhabitants in 1837. That population increased to 6.5 million when Victorian age ended or Queen Victoria died. London became a major significant city, and Britain became the center of a new philosophy of free trade, new technology, and industrial inventions. That was continuity of industry, industrial revolution, mechanization of society, and there was invention of steam power that turned into railways, ships, print. Efficient postal service was developed in this age. Telephone was invented and communication improved. That age was characterized by optimism and a sense that everything would continue to expand and improve. So we can say expansion and optimism were two features that were also contrasted. Mean optimism was contrasted with nihilism or doubt, and expansionism that was challenged during the same age or at the end of the age, probably first time in Boer War. Victorian age is known for the qualities like Victorian doubt, Victorian skepticism. Second, it is known for its hypocrisy. It is known for duality, or two, you can say, opposite extremes or paradoxes. There are phrases like Victorian compromise. Victorian compromise means one way of seeing this dilemma, mean two different values are there. On one side, you can say prosperity, on the other side, poverty. That can be seen in Oscar Wilde's short story, The Happy Prince. That Victorian compromise implies a kind of double standard between national success and the exploitation of lower class workers. Victorian literature reflects these concerns. So, first, we see there was a revolutionary trend in Romantic Age that was seen through romantic poetry of Shelley and others, and Jacobin novels that supported the idea of revolution. And politically, it was answered through a movement that is political reforms or parliamentary reforms and the movement of Chartism. The urge of revolution that was reflected in Jacobin novels, political novelist of the time, Benjamin Disraeli, who was later on became a prime minister of Britain. He is remembered for a phrase that is called the two nations. And two nation was the subtitle of his novel Sybil. So that phrase, the two nations, represents, you can say, paradox of Victorian age. Chartism, that was the significant movement of the time, that was a movement of the right to vote, that excluded the working classes by insistence on property ownership. मीन के वोट वो ही डाल सकते हैं जिनकी अपनी कोई प्रॉपर्टी. Gradually, there were reforms. Women were also excluded from the right of vote. They were given the right to vote in 20th century. We can say that's the Victorian age is the age when there was strong voice for democracy across the continent of Europe, and England and British Empire was not an exception. Its influence in India can also be traced. That's the same period, you can say, when first Indian National Congress was established, and later on different political parties were established. One significant trend at that in the Victorian age was the publication of Charles Darwin's The Origin of Species. That's called theory of evolution. That theory of evolution challenged the concept of God as creator. That theory and discoveries of geology, they challenged existence of God. They challenged God as a supreme force. And Victorian age became, you can say, age of skepticism because of these discoveries, which not only influenced Victorian thought, Victorian time, but also modern ages a lot. At the end of Victorian age, we see in Germany the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, and first in Germany, later on also in England, Karl Marx, who challenged the supremacy of capitalism by his philosophy that is usually called philosophy of equality, Marxism. So this age is age of paradox. This age is of hypocrisy. This age is of double standards. This age is of optimism and expansion. This age is of novels. Victorian novel dominated in that age. We can say, as in Romantic age, poetry was the most significant genre in Victorian age. Victorian novels replaced it, and Victorian novels became the most important genre of English literature. Victorian drama, in certain ways, that was continuity of the tradition that is called comedy of manners. And on the other side, it became a part of a tradition which is called continental drama. Mean instead of English drama, modern drama emerged, and modern drama emerged with Norwegian dramatist Henrik Ibsen and Swiss dramatist August Strindberg, two of the great dramatists known for their dramas of naturalism, realism, symbolism as well. So they were the pioneer of modern drama, and they influenced the drama of the whole continent, including English drama. In English drama, there were dramatists like Oscar Wilde and George Bernard Shaw. Oscar Wilde drama, we can say, is not so modern. It's more, you can say, conventional in many ways, and it's known for the high quality of wit. But George Bernard Shaw drama, that was highly influential, and it reflected contemporary trends of drama. In poetry, there were poets like Lord Tennyson, Robert Browning, Gerard Manley Hopkins, and then the poets who led the foundation of modern poetry like W.B. Yeats. In novels, there were great novelists like Charles Dickens, Thomas Hardy, Anthony Trollope, George Eliot, Vicky Collins, and others. So, first we will discuss these Victorian novelists. And when we say Victorian novel or Victorian novelist, first of all, definitely Charles Dickens comes to our mind. Charles Dickens, we can say, is as significant to Victorian novel as William Shakespeare was to Renaissance drama. Charles Dickens, he was, I think, born in 1812, and he was one of the earlier Victorian authors who had a large canvas of novel writing. On one side, we see his novels like Pickwick Papers, which are humorous novel, Christmas Carol. And then we see his novels like Oliver Twist and David Copperfield, which are about the exploitation of children. Then we see his novels like Hard Times, Great Expectations, and another trend that is seen in his novel, A Tale of Two Cities. Charles Dickens started his career as a journalist. That is significant for your MCQs as well. Dickens started his career as a journalist, and he was known with his sketches, and he used to write sketches by his pen name Bose. Bose was pen name of Charles Dickens that he used for his journalistic writing, especially sketches. His journalistic work, sketches, was popular, and that tradition continued in his first novel, and first novel of Charles Dickens is the Pickwick Papers that was published in 1837, and we can see the very year when Queen Victoria came into power. So Dickens' fiction career that begins the same year when Queen Victoria came into power. Then more serious tone enters Dickens' works when he begins to play on his readers' awareness of social problems. Oliver Twist, that's about begging, the forced begging of children, the plight of children like Oliver, one of the great work for children, highlighted the problems of poor city children who, after the Poor Law Act of 1833, ended up in the workhouse. Dickens is thought the first novelist whose novels brought about legislation, यानी जिसके नॉवेल्स की वजह से इंग्लैंड में लेजिस्लेशन की गई और चाइल्ड लेबर को मना किया गया. चाइल्ड लेबर वाज प्रोहिबिटेड. One of the most memorable images in the novel is when Oliver asks the workhouse master for more to eat. These are famous lines of this novel, especially the last one I just quote. He rose from the table and advancing to the master, basin and spoon in hand, said, somewhat alarmed at his own temerity, please, sir, I want some more. Please, sir, I want some more. That's the quote of this novel, which is much admired. As I mentioned, there was rapid change in population of London city, and if population increased, the problems also intensified. So in many of Dickens' novels, he portrays the diversity and disorder of the rapidly growing capital city of London. For example, his novel, The Nicholas Nickleby, The Old Curiosity Shop, in 1840s, Dickens increasingly described the society realistically, but with the faith and optimism which reaches a climax in semi-autobiographical novel David Copperfield. David Copperfield is a novel about the hardships of child labor. As the very surname Copperfield suggests. That's also a eponymous novel because David Copperfield is the protagonist of this novel. As it was a trend at that time, novels were published in serial form in periodicals. So this novel was also published in serial form. So before its publication as a whole novel, it had got reputation. Dickens' next novel begins to mark a change in sensibility and attitude. Title of the novel is Bleak House, and Bleak House reveals the negative feeling of the novelist. Rain and fog come to represent the gloom that has settled over characters. I mean, what sort of positivity and hope was seen in his earlier novels that is missing in the decade of 1850s when he wrote this novel. And in the same decade, he wrote a novel that is included in many of the universities' syllabus, A Tale of Two Cities. That novel is re-examination of the semi-autobiographical concerns of David Copperfield in the ironically titled novel Great Expectations. So we can say first there was Bleak House, afterwards there was Hard Times, and from Hard Times there was A Tale of Two Cities, and then there was A Great Expectations. These three novels are much admired. Hard Time, which subtitle is For These Times, mean that is directly referring to the contemporary situation. Charles Dickens' novels are thought documentary of Victorian Age because it's obvious realism. Hard Time is most familiar of Dickens' State of the Nation novels. State of the Nation means what is the condition or situation of England that can be seen through documentary like novels of Charles Dickens. Bleak House, Hard Times, Great Expectations are its example. Hard Time contains a picture of industrial English Midlands, which emphasizes the dehumanizing aspect of industrial revolution. This novel questioned to contemporary philosophy of utilitarianism that was presented by English philosopher Jeremy Bentham and later on by J.S. Mill. Philosophy had a slogan, the greatest happiness of the greatest number. And that novel questions of the workability of utilitarianism. That novel is also admired for its skepticism about science and factual knowledge. कि ये जो साइंस और फैक्चुअल नॉलेज होता है इसके हवाले से भी ये नॉवल जो है स्केप्टिक आउटलुक प्रेजेंट कर. In novel there is a character, Mr. Gradgrind. Mr. Gradgrind, as you can say name suggests, the man is concerned with grades and he is grinding, you can say, the minds of the youth. Mr. Gradgrind is a teacher and educator who insists on facts at the expense of imagination. There is a quote, and I would like to read that quote because it shows the mental approach or of Mr. Gradgrind. Know that I want what I want is facts. Teach these boys and girls nothing but facts. Facts alone are wanted in life. Plant nothing else. यानी कोई imagination नहीं होनी चाहिए. Plant nothing else. Root out everything else. You can only form the minds of reasoning animals upon facts. Nothing else will ever be of any service to them. This is the principle on which I bring up my own children. And this is the principle on which I bring up these children, mean children of others. Stick to facts, sir. So that was the approach of Mr. Gradgrind, and that approach is ridiculed in hard times. Hard Times is thought a critique of Victorian society. Dickens' next, or we can say the final great novel, that was Great Expectations. Great Expectations marks a change from David Copperfield. Great Expectations has a hero whose name is Philip Pirrip, but he is known as Pip. Pip does not achieve the success and happiness which crowned the earlier. There are, on one side, the character of Pip, who is actually, who becomes a gentleman on the basis of the money sent by a convict living in Australia. And there is a character, Mrs. Havisham, who apparently lives the life of an aristocrat and gentle lady, but in reality, she was a hollow woman. This novel, The Great Expectations, ridicules the double standards of society. It raises questions about prosperity and gentlemanly manners of Victorian society, exposes hypocrisy of society. So in many ways, Great Expectations, like Hard Times, is mirror of Victorian society. That's a novel that has been picturized in many films, including you can say BBC film with the same title. And I think 6 years back in India, there was a film with the same film with the locale of Kashmir, but uh, major plot was borrowed from this novel, Great Expectation. Its title is Fatur. Dickens' other novels include Our Mutual Friend, Little Dorrit, and his unfinished novel, The Mystery of Edwin Drood. The Mystery of Edwin Drood is important for MCQs. It mentions the last novel of Charles Dickens that remains unfinished.